Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final stretch of what I hope you've all found to be a really good conference. I'll be joining you in this room this afternoon and introducing the speakers. So first up, we have Natasha Moni, who's speaking to us about something that's definitely on the increase, unfortunately, and become a very topical issue. So I hope we'll all be able to learn some key issues dealing with this topic from Natasha this afternoon. Natasha is a labor law specialist. She qualified in law from Wits in 1999. After she served her article, she became an associate at the Labor Appeal Court. She was admitted as an attorney in 2001 and has rights of appearance in the High Court as well as in the Labor Court and the Labor Appeal Court. She's worked for Denise Rates, which is now known as Norton Rose, and Schindler's attorneys as a professional assistant. In 2003, realizing that she could add more value to her clients, she opened her own law firm, and she specializes in labor law, dispute resolution, and labor litigation. And quite something really nice that Natasha's done is she's one of the only speakers who said for the person who's got the best question at the end of her talk, she's going to give them a signed CD of the Ndlovu Youth Choir. So that's quite nice. So I'll ask you all to pick your brains and think of a good question for after Natasha's finished. Thanks very much.
Guys, this is a topic that is really close to my heart, and the reason why it's very close to my heart is because I've been dealing with it for such a long time, and it doesn't seem as if it's going to be recognized by the government and by the makers of our laws anytime soon. So let's define workplace bullying. Workplace bullying is the overarching term used to define forms of victimization, harassment, or discrimination of an employee or a group of employees by another employee or group of employees, which spans the spectrum of daily microaggression to systemic, institutionalized discrimination. Now, what people are trying to do at the moment is trying to say one employee bullying another employee is bullying, but a group of employees that bully one employee or a group of other employees is called mobbing. I'm calling it bullying for the sake of bullying. Workplace bullying is a consistent sequence of antagonistic actions or events towards the target. We don't call targets victims. Only when you are sexually harassed or raped are you called a victim in labor law or a rape survivor. In bullying, workplace bullying, we call them targets. It is called petty tyranny and is deemed as a dignity violation, so incorporates the Constitution into it. And that's very important because a lot of our lawyers don't know that in terms of discrimination at the CCMA can now hear discrimination matters. You have to bring in not only the Employment Equity Act, but also the Constitution because it's a dignity violation. Your categories of bullying, as I've said, isolated bullying. Now that's not one-on-one bullying. That's not a bullying, you know, your boss is having a bad day and he or she is bullying you. That's not bullying at all, okay? And isolated bullying is an employee is bullying another employee. Systemic bullying is when this employee bullies everybody else that is his subordinate, okay, over time. So let's understand the dynamic. I'm going to tell you what it is, and to a certain extent I have told you, and how systemic bullying typically manifests itself, and then the proposed solutions and the potential benefits. And now, this is my disclaimer. I didn't write this, but I am going to use a naughty word, okay? Robert I. Sutton, in the No Asshole Rule, states, asshole is the right term for those who bully. It is bad behavior towards subordinates that is continuous and long-term. Examples are interrupting others repeatedly or ignoring them. Assholes get away with bad behavior because they hide their true nature from their bosses and their clients. It lowers employee morale. It saps the energy of the department for both targets and onlookers because all their energy is spent on trying to avoid the asshole instead of focusing on work. It increases absenteeism and sickness. And the nicest word that I can ask you to remember is dis-ease. People get diseases from being bullied. They suffer from anxiety. They suffer from stress. This affects the way that they eat. So they're suffering from reflux, or it affects their heart. So it really manifests itself into serious physical complaints. And there is a direct correlation in terms of productivity. People think that an asshole is good for business. He's not. He or she is not. What it is, the ILO has defined discrimination that is neither an exceptional nor atypical occurrence within the workplace, but a systemic phenomenon frequently embedded in the way in which workplaces operate and rooted in prevalent culture and social values. It tells me relatively nothing. And when you are faced with a victim of bullying, a target of bullying, you say that definition to the target. They don't know what you're talking about. And then the draft code of good practice on the prevention and elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work states on page 28 at 7.3.1 that workplace bullying is unwanted conduct. Unwanted conduct it seems to be almost giving you the definition of sexual harassment, and that is shameful, because you have not gone and done your homework, or even investigated what bullying is, which is persistent or a single incident. Now, a single incident of bullying is not bullying. So I have great concerns with the way that this draft code of good practice defines bullying, which is serious and demeans, humiliates, or creates a hostile environment, or is aimed to induce, through submission or through actual threatened adverse consequences. It includes unfavorable or offensive conduct, which has the effect of creating a hostile work environment. It's not good enough for me. All right, how systemic bullying typically manifests, regardless of the form. Psychological harm, depression, anxiety, mood swings, low self-esteem, stress, and suicide. People kill themselves, ladies and gentlemen. There are instances of people who have been subjected to years of mobbing that have gone back into that workplace and shot the people who have bullied them in time immemorial. And cyberbullying, you see as well, how the effects happen and how people are actually killing themselves or killing others over how they make them feel in the workplace. Physical harm, reflux, ulcers, heart conditions, and eating disorders, and social harm. You take it out on your spouse and your children, those close to you, and you could even become reclusive or suffer from some form of antisocial behavior. I like this. I'm a very visual person, and I like this zero tolerance harassment policy. This speaks volumes to me. And I think that we should take lessons from this advert, because that draft code of good practice was 50 pages long. And if you are a victim of sexual harassment, victimization, or you are a target of bullying, you are not going to go through 50 pages in order to find out what you need to do in circumstances where you are seriously, seriously impacted, to the extent that you're suffering from depression, that you have physical dis-ease, and that socially this is not acceptable to your family and friends. Propose solutions towards sustainable accountability. After all, you could be vicariously liable. I don't know if you can. You know, there have been court cases where you would believe that the Labour Appeal Court and the Labour Court would understand what bullying entails, and time in memoriam, they have come back with judgments that don't fulfill what is happening in society. The one is the one that I can think of is the legal aid matter, which has just come out of the Labour Appeal Court, where they overturned what I believed was a very good judgment on depression. Your policy on ethics for handling harassment, that is in the Employment Equity Act. You have to have that as employers. Your internal grievance process should be put in place and adequately staffed and resourced and is functional. Now, who has come across an HR department that really kicks the can down the road when somebody says something or is aggrieved against somebody of some importance in the company? They don't do anything, or they send it up to the executive and the executive sweeps it under the carpet. That's normal. That's called institutionalized bullying. And if you stand up against that, like you've seen with Mandy Wiener, bringing out the whistleblowers in her book, if you stand up against that, you'll lose your mind, your house, your family, your husband or wife or spouse. You'll lose everything in order to try and prove that there's something toxic in that environment. So you have to be very careful as to what goes on within the institution and how you're going to complain about it. Potential benefits, if properly controlled, and this is very important because I would like to see more employers putting in place the requisite boundaries in order to assist those people who are bullied. And the test, if you want to, look in your environment, look in your institution, and look and see who the bully is. And if you can't find the bully, then you probably are one. So these institutions need self-analyzation. They need to be able to look at themselves and see, how did we get to where we got in this day and age? So when you focus on the correct mechanisms to oust bullying, you reduce the attrition rate and staff turnover. You allow all employees to safely report harassment, victimization, and discrimination in the workplace without being subject to unconscious and inherent bias. Ladies, inherent bias is still 40%, woman against woman. It is inherent, it is within you. If you have to judge another woman, that's why I very seldom sit as a sexual harassment chairman. You automatically have this inherent bias toward another woman. Men don't. They do have a bias towards other women, but not as strong as women to other women. Access to relevant and reliable resources to empower the target to make informed decisions. That's not just somebody who is going to sit and hold the target's hand. You need to send that target to a forensic psychologist who is going to be able to assist a chairman in making decisions should the company decide to instigate discipline against the perpetrator. Inform and protect potential targets in a socially responsible manner. And through the matching process, you can flag serial offenders for the benefit of protecting the employer and future targets. Now I'm talking to your HR representatives here. Google's Code of Good Conduct still retains one reference to the company's unofficial motto. The final line of the document says, "And remember, don't be evil. Don't be evil. And if you say something that you think isn't right, speak up." Now this is, again, I'm a picture person, and this picture says to you, beware of an old man in a profession where men usually die young. Bullies are normally your star performers. They are the ones that make those calls, that shoot from the hip, that want things done now, and then take the credit for all your hard work and energy. Bullies are those people who move the goalposts. They're always shifting so that you feel uncertain and you don't really know whether you're on firm ground or firm territory. If a bully had a personality disorder, they become divisive, and they split your company right down the middle. All right? And this is the problem with bullies, is that companies believe that they can handle it. But if a bully has a personality disorder, not even psychiatrists and psychologists will tackle a bully or someone with a personality disorder on their own. They normally bring in a whole group to try and assist that because they are divisive. They know how to split you literally down the middle. And this has very serious impacts for the company because once you've gotten rid of the bully, okay, then you need to work with those two splits, the two sides, the for and against camps, to try and inculcate them to come back together and act as an institution as a whole. One underestimates how insidious bullying is on the institution. Employees get bad advice. It's harmless. He's just pretending. He's joking with you. I didn't notice, sorry. Or just lodge a grievance and sort it out. Or adult up. I love that. All right, so examples of violence and harassment, again in the draft code, page 29 at clause 7.3.8, they've got this right, thank goodness, in terms of giving you some sort of idea and examples of what bullying is. What they haven't done is they haven't defined mobbing, and they haven't defined cyberbullying, which is a greater form of bullying, and I believe it's more insidious. Okay, so one of the cases that I'd like to discuss here today is Sam Kerr versus Shoprite Checkers, and it's a Cape Town judgment, 15/18. It's Shoprite Checkers. The customer has an altercation with the teller. The customer tells the teller that she's stupid, and then the teller says that the customer also used the K word. When the teller went to her manager, the manager said, listen, customers are always right. Okay. And she took this on. She took this on to the CCMA and lost, the Labour Court and lost, and the LAC and lost. Now, the LAC claims that in the Employment Equity Act, Section 60, states discrimination must be an employee, not a customer. So it must be employees on employees, all right? Section 6 doesn't say that at all, by the way. Beware of Section 11 of the EEA, because the employee must name and show acute understanding of Section 6.1 of the EEA for the burden of proof to shift to the employer. In other words, customers who call employees stupid are always right. Now, she didn't go on that. She went on, I'm being bullied by Shoprite Checkers, and that's where she fell down. And not taking action in this regard is justifiable and fair. That's what she should have done. To complain on a listed ground is easier, ladies and gentlemen, than on any other arbitrary ground. Bullying is still an arbitrary ground. And I don't believe that bullying is going to take the forefront of this draft code of conduct. They may just write it out because it is so voluminous. And I don't think that we are ready to enact any codes on bullying yet. Time will tell. And this is the purpose of the new draft code, to try to get workplace bullying out of the nebulae and onto our radar. It's important. Did the Labour Appeal Court give the nod to gaslighting? This is very important. It hasn't been handled in the draft code at all. And this is how bullies get away with bullying you. There's, of course, a power imbalance. They assign motives to your actions that are the opposite of your intentions. In other words, listen, customer is king. Just go with the flow. Customer is king. Even though the customer has called you stupid and the K word, customer is king. When you try to explain how you feel, remember, it's your right to, it's a dignity infringement, they're dismissive of you. You are overreacting or you're too sensitive. Remember, customer is king. They insist it didn't happen that way. You find yourself questioning your beliefs and opinions. If your point of view doesn't match theirs, it's wrong. Has anyone been gaslighted? I think we have all been gaslighted in one way or the other. Again, a very pernicious psychological issue that, that bullies use in terms of their modus operandi. Can you beat a bully? Can you really beat them at their game? Well, some say remain defiant, recognize that there will never be accountability, let go of the wish for things to be different, develop healthy detachment. When one of Steve Jobs' subordinates was asked, how did you stay with Steve Jobs for so long? Because Steve Jobs was a huge bully. You know, when they own the company, okay, you can't get rid of them, all right? And he said, I avoided him at all costs. If he was in the lift that I wanted to take, I took the stairs. I really kept away from him for as long as possible in order to stay sane. My view is that bullies need to be dismissed, obviously fairly dismissed, all right, and their department overhauled. Targets can either remain in and be battered again or resign. There are no half measures here and no simple solutions. You know, you would think that Gretchen Carlson, in the Fox News story, which was obviously an international matter, she had been bullied and harassed during the course of her engagement with Fox News. And she was able to bring down the famous Isles to his knees. She received $20 million payout. And all of us are going, wow, times 20, that's 400 million. I could do with that, okay? But what we forget is that the perpetrator of this heinous crime got a larger payout than she did at $35 million. There again, has Fox News, has that institution really learned their lessons? I would say no. Now for the questions. How have you beaten a bully?
Okay, so who's got a really great question? It's not a great question, it's just a question. I'm sure it is. Disclaimers is really not. Hi, you speak.
Only I'm allowed to do a disclaimer.
I'm
What is your
Narata,
name?
And I work for NUMSA, which is a trade union.
Brilliant.
And like this is a disclaimer, like I said, I don't want to, I'm not insinuating anything.
Okay.
But what I have found to be a problem over the years, especially now that bullying in light of the high suicide and depression cases that are coming up, especially from both men and women, because you find men also voicing out that the reason I behave in this way is because I'm also being bullied. So you find it's a systematic, or it has a ripple effect. It started somewhere and they have to perpetuate in order to stay sane. My question, or what I would like to get your insight on, do you think the law, in light of it operating on certainty, hence we've got statutory, everything so codified, is eligible to deal with a human behaviorally linked issues such as bullying? Because quite frankly, bullies, when you're dealing with bullying, you're not dealing with competence insofar as executing their duty is concerned. It's a behavioral issue, which is psychological. And I don't think an employer would be able to root it out or eliminate it, because quite frankly, when you're hiring someone, you're trying to get them to give you the desired output, get the work done, give you the figures, get the business moving. You kind of try to distance yourself from entering into an area or terrain which involves human psyche, where it's not your business to.
No, it isn't, and that's why you need those specialists around you, like a forensic psychologist, like a team of HR or IR who are bound by the new way of thinking, and know intimately what bullying is all about. Also, one of the lessons that you learn from the Gretchen Carlson matter is that you have to be prepared. If you are going to face a bully, and this is what Sutton says as well in his book about assholes, is that if you are going to face a bully, you better come prepared. It's almost like facing a narcissist as well. If you're going to pick a fight with a narcissist, it's going to be a fight to the bitter end. And that is what you're seeing in whistleblowing as well. It is a fight to the bitter end. And it is your choice as the target to either fit in and stay there or do something about it. Often it results in you actually having to move from one business to the next or from one department to the next. It's not easy, but the law must take its course. The law has to identify this as an issue so that employers and employees alike, including your HR departments, learn about this, experience it, and handle it correctly in terms of the Employment Equity Act. Because, again, it infringes on your fundamental rights to dignity in the workplace. You know, if you think about it, you spend half your time, half your adult life with, more than half, with your colleagues. You know, you go home and you see your spouse and your children for a few hours, but as you move up the chain, more and more time will be spent on with your colleagues, at least 8 hours a day, 45 hours a week. It's a long, long time. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Natasha, for the insightful presentation. My name is Osborne Mulatudi. You and I are colleagues.
Yes.
We often give talks on KFM and elsewhere.
Okay.
The situation I have, and I'm sure my opponent is in this room as well, it's a real one. So what I want to find out from you is, what options does the target have, who in this particular case is my client, when the bullying comes from a member of executive management who's also a board member? And the same board member wants to sort of entertain the target's grievance by obviously convening a board meeting, etc. And then suddenly it collapses and the target still hasn't been given a hearing or a solution. What options does that target have? Must he resign, jump ship, and then lodge a normal constructive dismissal, or must he refer a dispute in terms of Section 6.1? I thank you, of the EA. I thank you.
He can only refer a dispute in terms of Section 6.1 if he or she himself feels that they have been discriminated against due to bullying or reverse bullying. That really is an issue, though, because remember, bullying is not on a listed ground. Racism is, sexism is, but bullying is not, and it's on an arbitrary ground. And so it makes that person's ability to go to the CCMA and show the commissioner that they have a right to be there very difficult. And that therein lies the rub. I wish that they had, or that they do, place bullying in the forefront of the Employment Equity Act in this code. I'm hearing rumors that they're not going to. Can we have like one more question?
We actually can't, because we're about to switch to a virtual presentation which is going to come on automatically. So I'm afraid we really have to be very strict with the time. So I'm sorry, but what I can suggest, you're welcome to direct your question to Natasha after the session directly.
Absolutely, and or you can email me and I'll answer you comprehensively. Can we give out the...
Yes, so Natasha, you decide who the CD goes to.
I'm going to give it to Our Lady from NUMSA.
I thought so too.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your questions.
And then just remains for me to thank you very much, Natasha, for a very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, I think there's 5 minutes for people to switch.